The town of Brecon, forever cursed and shrouded in darkness, was never much for visitors. Tucked between the haunted hills of Wales, it felt like a place lost to man outpost of nightmares, where the rest of the world had forgotten to check in. It was a place where the fog of the forgotten souls hung heavy, even in the summer, and the dampness sank into your bones like a long-forgotten curse. The air was thick with whispers of the damned, stories of things that should never exist, of things that defied reality. And like all small towns, the people had learned to ignore the ghostly murmurs. But sometimes, when the wind howled like the wail of a tortured spirit, those whispers became something else, something unspeakable, something terrifying that would freeze your soul, dragging you into the very depths of hellish fear. Harold Evans was new to Brecon, and he didn't know yet what he was walking into. He had come to Brecon to escape the noise of London, the constant pressure of work and family. He'd taken a leave of absence from his office job, hoping the solitude would help him figure out what he wanted. But it wasn't the silence that pulled him. In it was the promise of something else. A man named Mr. Thomas, a local antique dealer, had written him about an unusual artifact or relic tied to the town's forgotten history. Evans, curious and hoping to find something to write about, had come, and he'd regretted it ever since. Mr. Thomas, a thin man with pale, watery eyes, met Evans at the edge of the town, near a crumbling stone bridge that had once been grand, but now sagged with age and neglect. The old man had been waiting under a willow tree, one hand gripping the trunk as if holding on to something much more precious than just the tree itself. "Welcome to Brecon," Mr. Thomas had said, his voice gravelly, as if it had been worn down by too many years of disuse. "I trust you'll find everything, to your liking." Evans had smiled politely, his stomach a little uneasy, though he couldn't place why. There was something in the air that felt off, something almost like a warning. But he pushed the feeling aside. He was too busy looking for the story, the artifact, the thing that would make the trip worthwhile. Mr. Thomas led him to a small cottage on the outskirts of town, where the air seemed to be heavier, darker, as if it held the weight of centuries. There, in a dusty glass case, sat the object, a small idol, no taller than a man's hand. It was shaped like a humanoid figure, but its face was something else, almost like a mask. But there was something alive about its eyes that gleamed with an unsettling green glow. "This," Mr. Thomas said, his voice now barely a whisper, "is the green god." Evans had laughed it off, thinking it was just some ancient trinket with an old tale wrapped around it. But Mr. Thomas didn't smile. Instead, his eyes darkened, and his voice dropped even lower. "You see, the green god isn't just a statue. It's a presence, something older than the town itself, and it's been waiting for someone to come back to it." Evans shrugged, trying to ease the discomfort that suddenly crept up his spine. But as he turned away from the idol, he felt the air in the room shift, almost like something had just noticed him. That night, Evans couldn't sleep. The cottage, though cozy, felt like a tomb. The silence pressed down on him, as if the very walls were holding their breath. He lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to the occasional creak of the old beams, until there it was. A sound, faint at first, then louder. It was the faintest rustle, like whispers in the dark. Evans turned his head to the side, but nothing was there. Still, the sound persisted, just beyond the edge of his hearing, as if something was moving through the walls, through the floor beneath him. The next morning, he went back to Mr. Thomas's shop, determined to ask more questions, but the man was gone. The shop was locked tight, and there was no sign of him anywhere. A neighbor, a woman with a stern face and eyes like stone, had told him Mr. Thomas had disappeared a week ago. No note, no trace. Just gone. Evans decided to leave, but something kept him rooted to that place. Something in the town. The people didn't speak much, but their eyes followed him. They had that knowing look, like they had all seen something he hadn't. The stories they told him were thin, half-formed things, but the fear behind them was clear. There were places in Brecon you didn't go, times of night you didn't wander, and there was the Green God. That night, Evans couldn't resist. He returned to the cottage, drawn by the same pull that had taken him there in the first place. He went to the glass case, and there, in the dim light, the idol seemed to be watching him. It was almost alive now, its eyes glowing a sickly green, more intense, more real than they had been before. The whispers were louder now, not in the walls this time, but inside his head. Come closer. He reached out, his hand trembling as it touched the cold glass. The moment his skin made contact, a flood of images rushed through his mind, visions of ancient rites, sacrifices beneath the moon, of the Green God in its full, terrible form, a creature of limbs and tendrils, eyes like burning coals, a being of power that had lain dormant for centuries, waiting for the right moment to rise. And now, it was waking. The walls around him seemed to close in, the room growing colder. Doka. Evans turned to run, but the door wouldn't open. The Green God was calling him, and there was no escape. The whispers swelled to a deafening roar, and his heart thundered in his chest, the terror choking him. Asterisk, you are mine now. The last thing Evans saw was the idol's eyes, glowing like twin green fires, before the darkness swallowed him whole. When the townspeople found him the next morning, there was no sign of struggle, no sign of a break-in, but they knew. They had always known. They had seen it before. Another soul taken by the Green God, another piece of Brecon's cursed history, and the cycle would continue, for the Green God never truly let go, not until it had what it wanted.